Hey there, this is Dr. Evan Osar with the Institute for Integrative Health and Fitness Education. Welcome to this edition of Facebook Live with Integrative Movement Insider, and this is part 3 of a 4-part series on the psoas and glutes. In part 1, we discussed the functional anatomy of the psoas and how the psoas really functions as a stabilizer of the trunk, spine, pelvis, and hip complex. It's actually a very weak and inefficient hip flexor. In part 2, we discussed the functional role of the glutes and how the psoas and glutes actually work together to provide stability for the trunk, spine, pelvis, and hip complex. And we shared with you our first and most important corrective exercise, and that's developing 3-dimensional breathing to help our clients align their thoraco-pelvic cylinder, as well as start to use their hips in a more optimal fashion, and ultimately set them up for what you want to have them do and the position you want them to have as they go into many of their functional patterns. Today we're going to move on to a corrective exercise that many of our clients are doing in rehab and or as part of their knee therapy or their low back therapy, and virtually every client does some version of the bridge. And it's also really what's become or sort of progressed into and morphed into the hip thruster, which is, yes, there's a lot of good research around the hip thruster and how effective it is at working the glutes. Unfortunately, what we found in our clients and patients, and we've seen tons of patients from collegiate athletes to professional athletes to everyday individuals, we're seeing a lot of hip issues around people performing the bridge in a non-optimal manner. And essentially what they're doing, and let me demonstrate it now, is when they're doing their bridge pattern or the hip thruster, they're going into excessive extension and posterior pelvic, excessive hip extension and posterior pelvic tilt and lumbosacral, either lumbosacral and or thoracolumbar extension, because they're trying to activate their glutes and really get that idea of squeezing, activating, and really strengthening their glutes. Unfortunately, this doesn't really train the glutes in the manner that you want them to. Yeah, your glutes will get stronger doing that, and you also create a lot of hip issues, because what that does is when you over squeeze the glutes, it actually drives the femoral head or the ball forward in the acetabulum or socket. And what we've seen even in young athletes, 11 and 12-year-old girls are coming to us with labral tears and femoral acetabular impingement, where they actually form bone spurs around the hip joint from doing this exact strategy. Because if you watch, as I come up, you can actually see this hollow. You can probably see this hollow right here in my hip, and if you actually feel your hip as you do this, you'll actually feel your hip poking out this front side of the socket. Now, it's not dislocating, but you really feel the femoral head, which should be centered. The ball should be centered in the socket, and what you'll feel is a femoral head sitting way far forward, and that's what we believe is creating a lot of labral tears, as well as a lot of that femoral acetabular impingement, especially in those young clients, because they're already learning. The gymnasts, the dancers, even a lot of people going through these conditioning programs, these summer conditioning programs like a lot of kids are going through right now, they're learning the exact same strategies that you and I have learned in this industry. So here's how we teach the bridge pattern to make it more effective, to create better centering of the ball in the socket, to create better coactivation of the psoas and glutes around the entire hip complex, and really improve function. Now, the first thing we do is we have our clients elevate their feet up on a step, because many of our clients, their legs are short, and or maybe they have extra gluteal tissue or mass. So it limits their range of motion, so therefore they have to squeeze just to get their butt up off the floor. So we find by elevating the feet, it gives them a little bit more range of motion to work with. So we'll elevate their legs on the step, keep their feet relatively centered on the step, so the step is hitting me mid-foot. First thing, same thing we did with happy baby position in the last video, align that thoraco-pelvic cylinder. Align the hip, knee, ankle, and foot complex so that hip, knee, ankle, and feet are in alignment. So thoraco-pelvic cylinder set, you maintain that neutral alignment, so I'm not in posterior pelvic tilt. And the first motion as I lift my pelvis up is straight up. It's not back into posterior pelvic tilt where I'm squeezing the glutes and taking myself out of neutral, because I want to teach the glutes and psoas to work together to maintain this neutral alignment and teach the individual then how to hinge and flex the hip joint as they come back down. So they come back down to neutral without changing lumbar spine alignment and or thoraco-pelvic cylinder alignment. So they come straight up and back down. And there, they'll have to use their glutes to get up. They'll have to use their hamstrings a little bit too. And then we come back down, making sure we teach them how to hinge while maintaining that neutral alignment. So we're really teaching them how to hip hinge, and that's why we call it the hip hinge bridge pattern.
just to get them understanding how to move through their hip joint, use their glutes, use their psoas, and maintain this thoracolpelvic cylinder alignment through this pattern. The progression is simply hold this position up, sending my weight down towards my feet, maintaining this position, and then we just do marching. So it's up, come back down. So now we're adding the hip flexion component on the side that's moving and glute stability on the side that's not moving. There should be no change. So we have our clients put their thumbs on the rib cage, fingers on the ASIs, so that way they maintain this alignment as they're going through their marching progression. And there should be no change in alignment, no shifting, no extension, no flexion. It should be maintained neutral alignment. Okay. The last progression is bring one leg up. Actually, we'll have our clients come up first, bring one leg up, so that way they know they're still neutral, and then they come back down, touch their hips, come straight back up. Come straight up to neutral, not into excessive extension. So again, hip up, come down, touch. As soon as they touch, come right back up. Not into excessive extension, right to neutral. So they're controlling the glute, they're using their psoas, they're using the entire core system to maintain this alignment as they come back down, touch, come back up to that position. And again, that's how you teach the individual to use their glutes in an effective manner to really stabilize that thoracolpelvic cylinder, to really train single leg stability, to really train the ability to center that femoral head or the ball in the socket and maintain motion of the pelvis over top the femoral head. We found incredible success in really teaching clients how to use their glutes appropriately without creating a lot of that impingement syndrome, and really improving hip mobility as well as, more importantly, hip stability in that process. So this is Dr. Evan Osar with the Institute for Integrative Health and Fitness Education, using our bridge pattern to improve psoas and glute activation and coordinate the function between psoas and glutes in a very functional pattern. Because next time, in part 4, I'll come back and show you how we integrate this into the upright pattern. So your clients have improved hip range of motion, they have improved hip stability, and it really trains a functional pattern and movement that our clients need, whether they're training for sport, for recreation, and or everyday life. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in part 4 of the series. And if you're looking for more information as far as how to assess, how to use corrective exercise, how to teach the fundamental movement patterns, and integrate this information into the fundamental movement patterns for your clients, check out the Integrative Corrective Exercise Instructor program, because we take you through this entire system and the rationale, the perspective of why we train our clients using this particular strategy, because this is the exact same thing we use right here in our clinic with our own clients, patients, and even the athletes that we consult with as well. Make it a great day. We'll see you next time at Integrative Movement Insider.